Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about how to create a network diagram within Google Sheets. There are other methods that you can do this in. You can do this in Excel, you can do this in Lucid Charts, you can do this in slides, but I'm going to show you how we do it in Google Sheets and how the calculations can make your life so much easier. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take the data that we actually created within class. So if you remember this, we talked about it in class. I'm going to be pulling the data from there. And then with this Google Sheets, we're going to be talking about forward pass, backward pass, and float. So the first thing that we need to do here is, as you see here, I already have some pre-populated boxes. What I did here to create it was I just selected some cells, and then I went over to borders, and I just selected borders, and you can create a cell-like border this way. The reason why it is developed by a 3 by 2 is because as you see here on the top left, these are where our numbers are going to go. So for the sake of this, let's add these numbers here. So ES will always go here. Your duration will go here, and this is our first one is A. And then EF will go here always. And then same thing for the bottom left. It's going to be late start, even though we're talking about forward passes now. This is going to become relevant later on. And then right below the activity is the duration, and in this case is 5, and then late finish over here on the bottom right. So now, how we actually create the arrows to do this. So as we know, A is the first point of the first activity in the network diagram. And the next one that we have, based on our diagram from the slides, is B. So let's fill this in. So B, activity 20, sorry, duration of 20, and then just kind of fill these in. E, EF, LS, duration, and then LF. If it makes life a little bit easier, what I tend to just do is I do a copy and paste. So all I have to change is the duration and the task itself. Just makes life a little bit easier. But just remember to make sure you update this. And then right here we have C10. We'll talk about the arrows in 1 second. Next, we have activity D, and that is a duration of 30, followed by E with a duration of 5, F with a duration of 14, G with the duration of 10, and then our last activity inside the network diagram would be H, and with an activity of one, our duration of 1. So next we're going to be creating what is called our arrows. So the best way that I've seen to do this in Google Sheets is actually copying the arrow, Control C, and then you go to Insert, Draw, and then you kind of paste it into here, and then you kind of just move the arrow in the direction of where you need it to go. The one thing about Google Sheet is that they do not allow you to do copy and paste, so this has to be the method for the remaining of them. And just to save some time, I've already have this done. So let's go over to this. But that's how you would do it here. Now, we have all of our arrows pointing in the right direction. Next, let's talk about forward pass. So forward pass. Forward pass. And as we know from our lectures, that the forward pass method is actually going to be calculated by originally having ES, and that's the beginning. So in this case of an activity A, ES, so the early start would be A, excuse me, and then EF is calculated by taking ES ES plus the duration of time, and you get the EF. So make a life a little bit easier here. All I do here, I'll do a calculation. 0 plus 5, it's 5. So we know that our early finish is 5. Now, what does this mean for the next one? So let's go and do this for B. So ES for B will be EF of the preceding task, or the preceding task. So this one would be A. So ES would be 5 in this case. And how do we get EF, right? We take ES plus duration of time, and then we get EF. Now let's go to E. So same thing, right? So ES is the EF of the preceding task. And then again, EF is calculated by taking the ES plus duration. That's how we get EF. Perfect. I do want to mention that the activity C will point to G and it will actually point to activity D. So let me just make sure I correct that. Insert. Again, we want to add this here. So the reason why this is important to mention is because activity D is known as a merger activity, as we discussed in class, because you have two tasks that align to it. So what do we do in this situation? Right? What is ES? Since now you have two tasks that are right before it. And as we mentioned in class, this is actually calculated by taking the max number of the two. So we will take the max number of B's EF, which is 25, and we will take the max number of C's EF, which is 15, and we will get 25. And again, how are we going to get EF of this one? We're going to get it by taking the ES and adding the duration of time. Perfect. So now let's go back to here. ES is the EF of the previous task, right? And now let's add this up together. And then ES is EF of the previous task. Now you're going to add them together, plus. All right, see, this is getting pretty easy here. So you see why I wanted to make sure that we do this in Excel, since it is calculated for you. And when we do backward pass, it makes a little more sense as well. Adding these together, 25. And again, this is considered a merger task, right? So what do? We take the max number of the three tasks here. We have 30, we have 69, and then we have 25. And the EF is calculated by taking the ES plus duration, which is 70. So what we just did here is we figured out the forward pass. Hey everybody, so now we're going to be talking about the backward pass. So for the backward pass, all we're going to do is go from the back of the network diagram and we're going to go forward. So we're going to go from H to A. And the way this is figured out is that the late start for H will be 70 because that is the latest that the project is going. And how we actually find late start for this activity H is you take the late finish and you actually subtract, not add, subtract from the duration of time. Okay, so now for this next activities, E, F, and G, the late finish will be the late start of the task before it. So for all of these is going to be 69. And how we find the late start is we take the late finish, subtract by duration. Same thing with F. 69 minus 14 is 55. Then we take 69 minus 10. Okay, perfect. And now we go over to, let's do task D. So for this one, the late finish is going to be the late start of the task before it. You do 55 subtracting 30. And now let's go over to C. So C is a interesting one since now they have two activities that happens before it. So what do we do in this situation? This is also considered a merger activity. And the way that we find this number out is we take the minimum of both numbers. So previously, when we did a forward pass, we took the maximum. In this situation, we're going to be taking a minimum. So the minimum number for the late finish for activity C is 25. And the late start is taking the late finish, subtracting by duration. So let's go to doing the same thing for B, and B follows the same situation here. So it is the takes the minimum of its two activities. So 64 and 25 to also get 25. Same method here. Late start is calculated by taking the late finish, subtracting by duration. We get 5. And now we will take the minimum of activity B and C. And in this situation, it is 5. And then the late start is calculated by taking late finish, subtracting by the late start, which is 0. Perfect. So now that we have the forward pass and the backward pass, we can now take the duration. Now we can take the float for these activities. And we'll talk about float in 1 second. So now we talk about float. And the way we talk about float is we will take the late start and we will subtract it by the early start. And we get 0. Remember, a float of 0 means that this is a critical activity, meaning that this task cannot go over the duration of time or the entire project will be delayed. Let's do the same for activity B. We get 0. Activity C, you take the late start, subtract by the early start, you get 10, which just indicates that you have 10 days to do this task until it becomes a late task, until the project is delayed. So we will take late start, subtracting it by the late finish. Or sorry, take the late start, subtracted by the early finish. We get 0 again. Float for activity E will be 64, subtracted by 25, which is 39. 55, subtracting by 55, 0. And then you take 59, you take 44. And now we get to the activity H, 69, subtract 69 is 0. So what does this mean here? That means that activity A, let's highlight this in red, is a critical path, is an activity in the critical path. Activity B, activity D, activity F, and activity H are all activities on the critical path. So if I ask a question similar to like, what is the critical path? Right here, we will take it that we will say it's A, B, D, F, and H. Right? And then now let's say that, like, how long will this project be? So the longest time is, now you just take the duration of time of each one of the activities in the critical path. So add that, plus 20, plus 30, plus 14, plus 1. It should be 70. So it takes the longest time to get this project done is in 70 days. So that's how you create a network diagram within Google Sheets. This is how you'll find the forward pass, how you find the backward pass, how you find the float, and how you identify the critical path, and how you identify the longest time it takes for this project. Great.